identify why the tool isn't being used and what the options are for allowing it to continue to be used more broadly and more efficiently than it's being used today. But at the same time, how can we do that and reduce the overall expense of so doing? Next slide, please. I think just a couple more pieces of context and information, in addition to the information that Mindy offered relative to overall conditions of infrastructure, decay, and lack of maintenance. I think what we are finding is that we have more and more people moving into or continuing to expand in population in exposed areas. And these statistics are becoming more certain, not less certain. So in 2009, there was a report released which included looking at exposures in Hampton Roads, which suggested that and identified that at least 3.4 million people were living in locations in the United States where the land was less than a meter above monthly high tide. In the report released by Climate Central last week, called Surging Seas, they identified that approximately 5 million people live in homes that are less than 4 feet, and then consistent with the prior report in 2009, that at least 3.7 million of those people live in locations of less than a meter above the tide. That's a lot of people, and these are generally people who are highly concentrated in coastal areas. Next slide, please. But what we have seen is a gradual, as I indicated before, migration away from private insurance and public insurance in some cases. And I think people generally have very little day-to-day contact with the structure or with the interactions with the insurance industry. People look at insurance and they deal with it when they need to. And that's generally when they have a loss and they need to file a claim and they need a payment. But very few people spend time thinking about social policy related to insurance. And I think that this is something which needs to be done with greater frequency if we're going to appropriately plan for increasing frequency and severity of storms and properly protect our communities, their citizens, and the associated economic vitality of those groups in the long run. So I think it's important in context to at least outline particularly a little bit about the difference between public and private insurance and how both of these tools are in a position now, especially in the U.S., where they're pushing the envelope and in some cases are going to require a transition ramp to be used most effectively in the face of climate change. Private insurance, by its very structure, is an ex-ante financing structure. Basically, you're collecting money in the form of premiums in amounts that are necessary to assure that when the events occur within that pool, when the natural catastrophe occurs, that there's sufficient money set aside to pay the loss. By contrast, most public structures are predicated on ex-post financing, planning in many cases to only collect money for losses after they have occurred. The challenge with the majority of these public structures has been that they really disassociate the process of accepting the risk from the process of paying for the loss. So one of the things that makes insurance a very effective risk management